Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In today's session, I'm going to talk about monolithic versus microservice architecture. What is the difference between these two, and what is the advantage and disadvantage of using these architectures in our real-time project? So I'm going to give you a few examples so that you'll understand better. So without get delay, let's get started. First thing we need to understand what is monolithic, right? A monolithic architecture is a traditional model of a software program which is built as a unified unit that is self-contained and independent from other application. That means, take an example of e-commerce, right? When we design a e-commerce, right? So it has multiple models basically. So like say catalog will be one model, inventory is one model, order is one model, payment is one model, right? So all this model encapsulated as a single project and deliver it as a one bundle for a deployment, right? So that is the monolithic architecture design works. Okay, so everything is interconnected, and also it is more kind of a tightly coupled concept, and when there is an issue with any one of these service, it easily break the whole system. That is the disadvantage of it. And when we design any application that is a short term project, or like uh, users are very limited, then preferable use to monolithic architecture. And also there is no scalability is required, then we can happily use this monolithic architecture as our architecture design. So, so this is talks about monolithic. Let's talks about uh, microservice architecture. So, microservice architecture is a kind of breaking a monolithic application into component functions or service. So, after identifying the individual services, developers refactor the monolithic so that each service runs autonomously as a separate service. So, that is loosely connected with these microservices via APIs to form a more extensive microservice-based application. So this means, so in the microservice, like a design, work as a independent services. As I gave an example, e-commerce application have multiple modules like catalog, order, inventory, and payment services. When these services are converted to microservice, all these services will go as individual microservices. So all these services will communicate with using REST API calls, so that information will be exchanged between two different uh, services. So this is more advantage in terms of scaling each service, and also avoid fault tolerance, and also cost efficient upgrade, and make it easier, less expensive to scale one part of the application. But whereas in the monolithic, if any one service goes down, one service get impacted, other service also will get impacted. But the case in microservice, it will not impact other service because all are independent services. That is the advantage of using microservice architecture. So let's see the diagrammatical representation. So how it is difference, right? So in monolithic, you could see this business logic and data access layers all will be clubbed into one bundle, right? And released as one uh, project. But whereas in microservices, you could see all are splitted into different services, right? And so that you have a capable to scale it, and also you can avoid if any one service goes down, you don't need to, that will not impact other service. That is the major thing. And also you can go with the easy, like a faster releases, right? For example, if there is any new requirement for payment service, you can incorporate or implement those changes, and you can do the quick release so that the development will faster, right? So let's see what are the advantage and disadvantage of this microservice first, and followed by, sorry, monolithic first and followed by microservice. So advantages of monolithic architecture is easy to deployment, right? You have one build so that you can going to deploy it in one server. So that is easier, and development also, which is one code base, so it's easy to develop. And performance, here everything is interconnected, so you don't need to call any explicitly REST call, so that your performance is more better in the monolithic. And simplified testing, like you can do the end-to-end testing using monolithic is very easy, but while in microservice it's little complexity, right? Because it is different microservice and also writing different microservice code, it is very difficult, right? And debugging part is more, all the code is located in one place, so it's easier to request and find a issue. So monolithic architecture is more advantage of these areas. Let's see what are the disadvantage. So when you talk about disadvantage, so first point, it comes a deployment speed, right? Once you deploy, it takes few minutes or some time to bring the server up. Okay, that is one. And the scalability, as I mentioned, you can't scalable individual components in when you design a monolithic architecture. And reliability, it is if there is any error in any model, it will impact the whole application and application unavailable. Okay, so the barrier to technology adoption, any changes in the framework language, it will impact the whole project and it takes time consuming to make the changes, right? So lack of flexibility. The monolithic constrained by technology already used in the monolithic. So, and also finally is a deployment. A small changes to a monolithic application required a redeployment of the entire application. That is the other major disadvantage in uh, monolithic architecture. If make any change, you need a redeployment. That is the point. Let's see what are the advantages in the microservice architecture. So when you talk about advantages in the microservice, there are total then there is many advantages when you do using microservices, right? So let's say the microservice or self-contained independent development model, as I mentioned, right? It's self-contained, so each services are independent, and you can deploy it each model in a microservice ecosystem, right? So and also the cost of scaling comparatively lesser than monolithic, right? So which service is down, then you can scale it accordingly. There's no need of scaling the whole entire application like a monolithic, how it does, it's not similar, right? So and the microservices or independent manageable services, it can enable more and more services as the need arises, right? So and also it is possible to change upgrade each services individually rather than upgrading the entire application. And also there are a few more things. Um, the event streaming technology enable easily integrated with comparison, heavyweight interpost communication. Right, event-driven programming is more easier in the microservice architecture, so that it helps us to communicate with a different microservice, and it will more improve the more performance also, right? And the less latency and easy to test, and as I mentioned, dynamically scalable and faster release cycle. Once there is a changes done in a specific model, you can go ahead and do the release for that specific model. You don't need to release each modules, right? So that flexible we have in the microservice architecture pattern design, right? So let's see what are the disadvantages now. So I could see the very less disadvantages comparatively when we go through all the advantages. Here, the disadvantages are like the microservice has all the associated complexity of the distributing system. So there is a complexity when it is grown a different multiple components, I mean modules. So with interconnecting with each microservice, that will create more complexity. So that is one point, and the higher chances of failure during communication between different services. And it is difficult to maintain large number of services. The developer needs to solve the problem such as network latency and load balancing, right? When there is a huge load, when the users are more, and if the service not capable of handling the load, then microservices capable to handle the load balancing techniques, right? And also the complexity testing over the distributed environment. Testing will be like the complexity because if you are testing individual microservice, that is more easier. But when you talk about different microservice and it's talking each other, that scenarios you can't easily make the test cases, right? That there is some complexity over around that area. So that is where the last point. And now, the conclusion, right? When we think about a product, the application design. First, we need to think about design like the architecture, right? Whether it's suitable for monolithic or microservice. If you're doing some pilot kind of projects, that's fine. You can prefer to use monolithic. And if there any e-commerce kind of complexity is there, you need to scale each individual services in some point, then preferably use the microservice architecture. So if you design monolithic architecture, later you can convert that to microservice using decomposition design pattern. So you can break down all your modules as a, so different services, and that is possible. You can convert it once you design your monolithic. You can easy. It's not easy, but you can convert that to a microservice, right? So these are the differences that I plan to explain today, and we'll catch you in the next video with a nice topic. Until then, thanks. Bye. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel for more great content. I post new videos every frequent, so you don't want to miss out. Thank you.